Hey y'all, Matt here from RetroOnly.com. Today I'm going to be talking again about the Nintendo Switch, but specifically in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Switch Pro controller and whether it's worth it to buy one or not. Obviously, the Switch Pro controller is one of the most expensive Switch controllers on the market today. All of the generics or third parties are all cheaper, and some of them considerably so, than the Switch Pro controller. But is it worth upgrading and getting the Switch Pro controller? Or is it really just there for people who only want to buy things from Nintendo? And I'll be covering those things in this video. Before I get into that, please be sure to hit the like button and then also subscribe to our channel. It really does help us out a lot and also allows other people who have this exact same question to get their question answered and to find this video as well. So we really do appreciate it when you like and when you subscribe. So let's go ahead and hop into answering that question about the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. When talking about whether the Switch Pro controller is worth it or not, it's important to consider it versus the competition. If I were to only have the Switch Pro controller, I could give you my opinion on it versus, say, the Joy-Cons from the actual Switch that come with it, but I would have a hard time talking about whether you should get this versus this one or versus that one. However, I've purchased a variety of different Switch controllers, and I've actually done a variety of tests that you can find here on my channel about dropping them literally off of my second story porch onto concrete. I did drop tests of all sorts of different ones and compared all the different controllers that are on the market. In regards to the Switch Pro controller being worth it, the simple answer for me is it's not really worth the cost. And that is simply because I have children. If you're buying the Switch Pro controller for yourself, then it could be a different story. But I have 3 children. I have a 10-year-old, I have a 6-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old. And my 2 oldest and my youngest tries play on the Switch all the time. They play it probably more than I do, to be 100% honest. And so when they're playing on the Switch, I don't want to be giving them a $60 controller for them to drop, for them to leave laying around, for them to possibly step on it when it's laying on the floor after they're done playing or something like that. Now you might say, obviously you should have your kids pick up the Switch controllers. And I do. But sometimes my 3-year-old will just go in our container for the Switch controllers and she'll pull one out and pretend like she's playing with it. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but she's obviously not going to be as gentle on them as I would be. So a $60 controller to me isn't worth it where I'm at in life. Now, if I was just going to buy a single controller that I was going to use for the Switch for myself all the time, I would have no problem going with the Switch Pro controller. And it's probably worth the extra money just simply for a couple of things. One, the battery life on the Switch Pro controller is absolutely amazing compared with the competition. And again, I've done another video on this, but it is by far the best battery life. So you can go multiple days and even weeks, depending on how often you play, without charging your Switch Pro controller. That's super convenient. I don't have to take it and pop it onto the charger every day or every other day or anything like that. It goes weeks, literally, with how much I play the Switch, especially, without dying. So that, in my opinion, is well worth it. The other thing is how comfortable this controller is. Now, it might not look that much different from this one. This is the Power8 wireless controller. It's $40 to $50, so it's a bit cheaper. Okay, it might look pretty similar, but honestly, the way the grip is, how you hold this bottom, it's quite honestly just a bit more comfortable. So I do prefer this one in regards to comfort. So in that regard, it's worth it as well. The other thing that this one has, the Power8 has this as well, but generic controllers don't, is that I can turn on the Switch by simply holding down the home button on my Nintendo Switch Pro controller. And that's how I can get it to start up. So let's say I play on the Switch a lot. I'm a single guy. I'm not, but let's say I was. I could leave this sitting on my end table, and when I want to play the Switch, I simply just take my TV remote, switch it over to the HDMI that the Switch is connected to, hold down the home button, and I'm ready to go. Now I know it's not that big of a deal to get up and turn on the Switch with the button, and it's not. But that combined with the battery life, that combined with the comfort of the controller, if it was just me, I was the only person to use the Switch, I would probably end up buying the better Nintendo Switch Pro controller because of those different things. Now, for myself, this is me with kids now, okay? Since I have kids, I've got a wife, I've got 3 kids, my kids are all younger. Would I buy the Nintendo Switch Pro controllers or buy multiple of them? And the answer is no. I have 2 of this Dino Fire generic Switch controllers. The buttons after a while have started to stick a little bit, and you want to know why? Because I have kids, and sometimes they'll play on the Switch when their hands aren't exactly clean. They're sticky from lunch or from supper or from something like that. Okay, so then the buttons on your little buttons on the side will start to stick. Or maybe they don't hold the charge as well, and they don't. You'll only get a few days on these Dino Fire ones, depending on how much you play. But I believe I paid right around $15 to $20 for each of them. It's a much better alternative just to get the generic. Now, this is from Amazon, so you might not need a Dino Fire one. There's a whole bunch of different generic ones for the Switch. But again, battery life isn't as good. They're certainly not as comfortable. If you look at these 2 controllers, you can see where your hands have to rest on the bottom. The Switch Pro controller is far more comfortable than the Dino Fire is. So that does make a difference. That's something that you need to consider, is that this controller isn't as comfortable. But again, I'm giving it to my kids, or maybe I'm using it every now and again. Most of the time, it's my kids that are playing with the Switch. So I give them these $15 or $20 controllers, and I've had these for going on 8 or 9 months right now, and I haven't had them break. Now, I did do a drop test video on these controllers as well, so you can watch that here on my channel, as well as drop tests and durability tests and those sorts of things on the other controllers that I tested. All of them, surprisingly, survived being dropped onto concrete from 10 foot in the air relatively well. I was surprised. There was only one controller, which is not one that I have here. It's the Afterglow, that had a piece break off, and it's made of more brittle plastic, so I kind of understood that. But all of them continued to work after being dropped. All of them had really, really good durability, which really surprised me considering I was dropping them on the concrete. I expected, especially the generics, to break in half. But I did those tests multiple months ago, and I'm still being able to use the generic Switch controllers, the Power A controller, and the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and all of them still work, even after being dropped on concrete multiple months ago. So all of that to say it depends, obviously. But if you're a single person, just buying the Switch for maybe you, for your wife, for you, for your girlfriend, for an older teenager, perhaps that's the only one that's going to be playing it, then the Switch Pro controller is a great choice, and I would say it's worth it because of the battery life, because of the comfort of it, and because of the ease of use versus the generics. If, however, you're going to be buying it for kids, for grandkids, for nieces, for nephews, anything like that, then I would go with the generic controllers instead. Like I said, these are the Dino Fire brand. You can get them on Amazon, $15, $20, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on the time of the year, what sales they're running, those sorts of things. But around that price point versus getting the Switch Pro controller for around $60. I hope that this video has been helpful to you in answering your question about the Switch Pro controller and whether it's worth it or not, in my opinion, and why I feel like it is or is not worth it for you, and in which situations it would be worth it and which ones it isn't. Again, my name is Matt. I'm from RetroOnly.com. Have a great rest of your day.